Retired army vet builds a home for a lone alien dragon and her 6 baby dragons he got from an alien auction. The desert sun was lowering behind the jagged hills when Daniel Cole parked his dusty utility truck beside the old barn. Retirement was supposed to be quiet, maybe a few cattle, a vegetable patch. But life after 30 years in the service rarely followed the script. That day's reason for chaos was tied down in the truck bed, a cage containing the most extraordinary and terrified creature he'd ever seen. The mother dragon crouched low, wings partially flare around 6 tiny, squeaking hatchlings. Her scales were muted bronze, dulled with dirt and neglect, and her golden eyes followed his every move with equal parts suspicion and exhaustion. Daniel had bought them less than an hour ago at an alien auction in the black market quadrant of New Vega Outpost. He hadn't planned on going, but he'd overheard a trader bragging about a clutch of off-world dragon stock going cheap. That had been enough to make his stomach twist. He'd seen enough in war to know what cheap meant in alien trafficking, sick, half-starved, or doomed. When the auctioneer dragged the cage into view, the crowd jeered. "Too wild to train," someone said. "The hatchlings won't survive the month," another muttered. Daniel didn't think. He just raised his hand and bid until the hammer fell. The price was more than he'd budgeted for the month, but you couldn't put a price on doing the right thing. Now, standing beside the truck, he spoke softly. "You're safe now, girl." The dragon hissed, a sound more weary than hostile. The hatchlings clustered under her belly, eyes bright, but bodies thin. Daniel opened the barn doors wide. The interior was empty except for a bed of fresh straw he'd laid earlier for a stray horse that never came. He'd have to make the place dragon-proof fast. Reinforced beams, heat lamps for the little ones, a water trough big enough for a bath. One step at a time. He wheeled the cage inside, unlatched the door, and stepped back. The mother dragon didn't move at first, watching him. Then, with a low rumble, she guided her babies out. They stumbled awkwardly on talons too big for their legs, chirping in high, plaintive notes. Daniel stayed still. "Not going to hurt you," he said again, though he knew they didn't understand the words, just the tone. When the last hatchling was out, the mother stretched her wings halfway, shaking loose dust and rust-colored flakes from her scales. She didn't thank him, not that he expected it, but she didn't lunge either. That was enough for now. Over the next few days, Daniel kept his distance, working around the barn quietly. He installed a solar heater for the hatchlings, repaired the leaky roof, and dragged in big flat stones to warm under the sun for them to nap on. Feeding them was a trial. The babies didn't know what to make of the clean fish and poultry he offered, and the mother refused to eat when he was near. Finally, Daniel left the food in a shallow trough at night and checked in the morning. By the 3rd day, the fish was gone, and he heard the first contented chirps at dawn. Slowly, the rhythm of care began to take shape. He'd refill the water, lay out food, and work on expanding the barn into a proper enclosure. The hatchlings grew bolder, waddling after his boots when curiosity outweighed fear. One even tumbled into his lap while chasing a grasshopper, squealing indignantly when he set it back down. The mother still kept a barrier between them, but her hisses had softened into low, wary growls. It was on the 7th day that things changed. Daniel was repairing a fence post when he heard frantic chirping. He turned to see one of the hatchlings caught in a loop of discarded wire near the paddock. The mother dragon was pacing, too big to reach without hurting it. Daniel didn't hesitate. He sprinted over, crouched, and gently untangled the wire from the little one's wing. The baby squirmed, claws scraping his forearms, but he kept his voice calm. "Easy, little fella. I've got you." When the last loop came free, the hatchling bolted to its mother. She lowered her head to inspect it, then lifted her gaze to Daniel. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Then she did something unexpected. She gave a deep, rumbling exhale, almost like a sigh. It wasn't trust, not yet, but it was the first crack in the wall between them. From that day on, she let him work closer. The hatchlings began approaching him on their own, nipping at his boots or tugging at the hem of his shirt. He learned their quirks. The smallest was fearless, the largest hated getting wet, and one had a habit of curling up in the toolbox when he left it open. Weeks passed, and the barn transformed. Reinforced walls, a heat-regulated nesting area, and a fenced paddock for exercise. Daniel had even built a shallow pond lined with smooth stones, which the hatchlings loved splashing in while their mother soaked contentedly nearby. Sometimes, in the quiet evenings, he'd sit on the porch with a mug of coffee and watch them through the open barn doors. The desert sunset would paint the sky in gold and red, matching the glint of their scales. One night, as he was about to head inside, the mother dragon emerged from the barn. She walked slowly to where he sat, the ground vibrating under her weight. Daniel stayed still, heart pounding, not with fear, but with the awareness of the moment. She stopped a few feet away and lowered her head until her eyes met his. Then, with deliberate care, she nudged his shoulder once before turning back to the barn. Daniel exhaled, a slow smile spreading. He didn't need words to understand. This was her way of saying he was no longer just a human who brought food. He was part of the territory. And maybe, just maybe, part of the family.